Hey, welcome to Coffee and Chatter. I want to go over something that I actually wrote up, and I can't remember if I recorded it. I probably not at the time. This goes back to April 19th, 2020. Okay, just when the coronavirus pandemic was kicking in. So I'm gonna I'm gonna make a claim that this that I wrote up was somewhat prophetic, in my opinion, and you'll see why. That's why I want to go over it again. And I call this "What If." This is the "What If" syndrome. Um, I've added a little bit to it, and I will try to make that clear by saying I add here or whatever. But most of it is from them. So let me first start with a scripture verse. I like scripture. This is from Proverbs 18:17. He that is first in his own cause seemeth just, but his neighbor cometh and searcheth him. What does that mean to me? A coherent argument seems reasonable at first, until a second individual comes along and begins to raise questions of the first. Now it becomes an argument, and decisions have to be made. I've come to the conclusion, therefore, about the so called science of the coronavirus, and that is there is no settled science. Now, I said that in April of 2020. I'm still saying it again. At least they're not admitting it. Maybe that's more accurate now. There's information, they just don't want to acknowledge it. But everything that's out there that hasn't been suppressed, nothing is clear. You can't hang your hats on any of it. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, social distance. Now it's okay. Meantime, they want you to social distance and they're going out to dinner with each other without masks. We're being forced to get vaccines. They're not. Who knows? Frankly, I don't believe that Fauci and these people actually got the vaccine. I never. I mean, Joe Biden claims to have gotten the booster live in a mock-up scenario. Why did they need to do that? If it was live, first of all, who would give a 78 at the time 78-year-old president a booster shot when they know that people have had reactions live? So they're going to take the president of the United States, give him a booster shot live, and who knows what could happen. Doesn't seem realistic to me. And by the way, I'm going to ad lib here too. So that was all ad lib as it comes to me. Anyway, the settled science. If you've ever followed the stock market or traded stocks, you've seen the recommendations or ratings from the so-called experts. Oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. This is the next Apple. But there's always the disclaimer. Past performance is no indication of future results. In other words, caveat emptor, buyer beware. So, regarding the coronavirus, every expert seems to have a different opinion about how to deal with it. And I've invested some pretty serious time in reading up on this. So that brings me to what if? I'm sure we've all been in predicaments where we made a big mistake. And in an effort to save face, we tried to back out of it with as little fanfare as possible. Yeah, I want to call attention to it. You want to kind of like smooth it over. As an example, out in Santa Clara County, and again, this is back in April 2020, Santa Clara County, California, Stanford University conducted a study mid-April 2020. the generally accepted numbers for the virus at the beginning of April there were 1,000 infected. Stanford said that number based on antibodies showing up in people, meaning that they had already had the virus and possibly didn't even know it, so there was no record of it, and then recovered. They felt that the real number would probably be around 40 to 80,000, right? So 1,000 people infected that they knew about. 40 to 80,000 who, woke up one morning with a headache or something. So let me conclude. What did I conclude from that back then? The virus was more widespread than we first imagined. And I think that's been backed up by a lot of data since then. 2, the virus was not as deadly in the general population as it was first thought to be, or, the fear they put in us, we're all going to die. I remember seeing pictures of China when it first happened. People falling down in the street. I don't know what that was. So I'm going to add something here. Now, this is today, November 21st. I add to those points that the COVID numbers, including infections, hospitalizations, and ultimately deaths, have been way overblown. Now, in case I didn't say it before, those numbers are way overblown. I'm going to ad-lib here. I'm going to go off on this. I'm going to play their game. The numbers are outrageous. Look at all these people getting infected. Okay, we didn't have a vaccine. X amount of people got sick. X amount of people went into the hospital. And X amount of people died. It was the end of the world. Everybody had to stay home. Well, guess what? We've had the vaccine for almost a year. And Joe Biden, the great savior who was going to, I guess he took his cue from Obama, who was going to stop the rising of the oceans, Joe was going to stop COVID. The COVID numbers are higher now after the vaccine. More people getting sick, more people going in the hospital, more people dying. So what did the vaccine do? Now, let me take this one step further and go along with them and say, yeah, your number of 300,000 people that died is accurate. Well, here's the part that I don't agree with. They didn't die directly from COVID. But a lot of people died indirectly from COVID, right? Kids committed suicide. Why? They were kept home. No socialization. They got despondent. They killed themselves. Drugs? Over the top. People dying from overdoses. Suicides? People out of work. People despondent. People drinking. People taking drugs. Dying. So yeah. And then how about all the people they scared? How many people stayed home, were afraid to go to the hospital because you're going to die from COVID? Meantime, they're dying from heart attacks, dying from diabetes, liver disease, can't get a transplant. Yeah, a lot of people died. Not from COVID, but as a result of fear of COVID. The fear that was put in us by the great Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, Dr. Redfield, the Three Stooges. All right. But in the end, the real COVID numbers of people who actually got COVID and died from it, and although it was mainly the elderly, they're way overblown. They're lying to us. They have good reason to. Let's proceed. What if? What if everything we had done, and this can go back, I originally posited this with regard to when Trump was hoping that things would open up again by Easter 2020, and everybody, poo-pooed him and we were already past the 15 days. We were in the 30 days, and so this applies. What if everything we had done to stave off the spread of the virus, flatten the curve, 15 days is slow to spread, that became 30 additional days is slow to spread? Imagine if, what did that actually accomplish to put off the inevitable? That many, many people would contract the virus. Some would not even know it. We'd end up with herd immunity, and we would get over it. Except for those who would inevitably be more severely affected, for whatever reason. Comorbidities, just like the 25 to 60,000 people a year who are adversely affected by the seasonal influenza. It's just what happens. So, what if everything that we had done, crashing the economy, ruining the livelihood of many, massively increasing the debt we hand off to our children and grandchildren, and we're still at it, people lying, saying it's not going to cost a thing, doing damage to small business owners that ultimately ruin them, destroyed their savings, destroyed their life's work? Was it all for naught? What if it was? What if some of the so-called experts came to the realization that they had goofed? Shutting down the country, would they say, oops, we screwed up. Forget about it, go back to work now. Don't wait till May 1st, do it now. That was back in 2020 when May 1st was like the second or third goal. We were gonna open up on May 1st. Look where we are now. Okay, so now we messed up. Go back. Don't wait till May 1st. Go back to work tomorrow. We'll protect the elderly and infirm. And hey, look, you might get the virus yourself. You might not even know it. You might have a cold. But in the lion's share of cases, it's going to be mild, if noticeable at all, especially if you're healthy, if you're young, under 70, even over 70 if you're healthy, as far as I'm concerned. All right? So, if that were the case, would they go on with business as usual? Would they say, oops, we made a mistake? Or would they just say, let's just stick to the plan? Nobody wants to come out and say, we screwed the entire country. We destroyed businesses. Oh, my goodness. So they want to save face. So, from the beginning, we were told that millions would contract the virus. But if we could spread it out, flatten the curve, the serious cases that ultimately needed hospitalization, and there's a reason for that. That might be another video on the way they just killed the therapeutic early treatment of COVID that really was proven to be wonderful when it was tried. Anyway, let's not get into that now. But so flatten the curve, spread it out. That way we don't overwhelm the hospital systems with the sick people. That was the plan. That was flatten the curve. Nobody ever changed the narrative about the millions who would ultimately get the virus. So it seems to me, right, that was never expected to kill the virus. It was just going to spread it out. In other words, instead of everybody getting it in April, they were going to get it for, people were going to get it through a year, and it would be tamped down. But once you said, okay, we're opening the doors again, the floodgates are open again. So everybody's mixing around and spreading it back and forth. So at what point do you decide that, okay, we can open up again? There's going to be a surge. So are we going to look back and evaluate our severe reaction in March and April of 2020 to see if it had any real effect? Otherwise known as an ROI, return on investment. What was the return on investment of shutting down the country? The many lives that were lost through suicide, drugs, Look at all the kids being beaten up at home because now they're home all day and their parents aren't working. Violence in the home. All right, here's a postscript that I added in May of 2020. This was after I initially completed this. I had seen something on TV. David Marcus, the author of a April 20th, 2020 front page opinion piece in the New York Post. It was entitled, "It Needs to End Now." And I saw this little thing on TV. He explained that he wrote the piece over the weekend prior after he became enraged about what he saw going on in New York City. He had seen pictures of 3,500 New Yorkers lined up at a Catholic church in Queens on a Friday morning at 4:30 a.m. to receive free food, hours before the pantry had opened. They were waiting, 3,500 people. The bottom line is the shutdown we were pursuing and pursued is destroying. And this is added today. I'm adding this, has destroyed. At the time it was destroying, looking back, I'd say it pretty much did its work. It destroyed people's lives. Not the rich and famous, the poor and the middle class. That's who got decimated. People who worked their whole lives, opened a business, and then were told they had to close it, and then could never recover. I mean, at the time, back then, it was estimated that 40% of the small businesses forced to shut down would never reopen. And the people who worked there ultimately wouldn't have jobs to go back to. So that's a double whammy. Small business owners at the ends of their rope who did try to reopen when it got, they couldn't take it anymore. They were served warrants. They had customers arrested trying to use the place. The livelihood of some was completely removed by the suspension of a liquor license, a barber's license, a business license. The government was acting in tyranny. All right, it's a fact. 25 to 65,000 people die each year during the flu season. We have some better years, some bad years. Now, based on 2019, from all causes in the U.S., no matter what they are, gunshot, accident, sickness, old age, 8,021 people a day died from all causes. People right now, over the past year, have died from cancer, heart attacks, other lethal diseases because we stopped the treatment of these diseases while we trembled in fear over the coronavirus. The combination of the hospitals basically not accepting the patients because they, quote, were busy doing something else, or the people being scared to death to go to the hospital because if they figured if they went, they'd catch COVID and die. Meantime, they died of a heart attack. Suicides and up, alcohol and drug abuse related deaths up, despondency, people faced with no way to earn a living, abuse of children and women up, kids not in school, and we're still doing it. We're still shutting down schools. All right, I don't want to seem crass, but I want to be frank here. People are going to die from the coronavirus, just like we die from everything else. If we are not willing to accept that truth, we will continue to kill more people than the sickness. Our actions, our reactions will kill more people than the actual disease. No one is being forced to go to work or go outside. In fact, it's the opposite. If you wish, that should be good. If you wish to hide at home, by all means, have at it. America has weathered many storms. Are we going to let this one be the one that basically changes America forever and makes us into something we never wanted to be? You have to wonder who's leading this debacle, Right. A friend of mine posted something that I've carried around with me because it reminds me of what the Apostle Paul said. It's kind of like a takeoff of the Apostle Paul. My friend said, when I was a child, I thought the epitome of maturity and wisdom could be found in our leaders. When I became a man, I put away all such childish ideas. Which raises the question, do we trust our leaders? Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, Dr. Redfield. When was the last time these people treated a patient? All right, okay, so I'm adding this. This is a postscript, I guess, as a conclusion I've come to today. I want to say, remember, when I wrote this up before, back in April of 2020, except where I've tried to indicate that I had added things, this what-if scenario, I call it, when the so-called pandemic was just getting underway, that's when I wrote it. It sounds like I wrote it today, though. I think the ideas I had then, and which I've gone over here, have proven to be true. And the worst part about it is our dear leaders are still at it, with no apparent abatement of the madness in sight. France and Germany have stopped vaccinating children. The last I remember, within the past couple weeks. They decided that there were too many dangers and there wasn't enough information. I think kids under 11, they decided to hold off. What are we doing? We're proceeding headlong into the abyss, running a human trial of an experimental drug on very young children. We're now talking about 6 months to 5 years. I don't know which is worse. The experts who continue with this madness of pursuing fixes that haven't fixed one thing, or the millions of stupid Americans who rush forward almost as if they're placing their young children on the altar of Moloch, sacrificing them with the approval of Dr. Fauci, who, again I say, has not treated a real human being patient in over 20 years. America, wake up. All right, thanks for listening today.